I've simply entitled this talk, Jesus, Valuation of Lifeless Religion. I'm curious, as we kind of kick off this talk today, are there any Shark Tank fans in the room, like the show Shark Tank on CNN? I am obsessed with I love Shark Tank. Everything about it it thrills me. It excites me. I love when the entrepreneur, if you're not familiar with Shark Tank, it's all about like entrepreneurs who come in and they're seeking an investment from this panel of investors, all well-known people like Mark Cuban, like Mr. Wonderful, like all these different people who've got lots of money. They're real-life negotiations. They walk in and they give them their pitch. They're like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I run this business, and investor, I'm looking for, $100,000 for my company. I sell t-shirts, and I need $100,000 for my company. And in exchange for the $100,000 that you give me, I'm going to give you 10% of my company. Now, in doing the quick math, what they have just now done, they have just now valued their company at $1 million. So if you're asking for $100,000 and you're willing to give 10%, that means that your company, you're valuing your company at $1 million. And I love when the sharks in Shark Tank, they disagree, right? Because then all of a sudden they're like, well, tell me, what do you make your product for, right? How much do you make it for? And they go, well, I make it for, $2, and then I sell them for $30. So there's a wide profit range. I love it when the sharks are like, you know what? I don't agree with your valuation though. I don't agree. So instead of giving you $100,000 for 10%, I'm going to give you $100,000 for 25%, right? And so all of a sudden, they have devalued their company. They have totally devalued what an entrepreneur came in asking for. And what the investor's job is this. Their job is to essentially assess that company that they're investing in. And if after their assessment they say, you know what, your company is just not what you think it's worth, and so I'm going to devalue it and give you this much, but in return I'm going to need this much. Their entire job is assessing the business. And that's kind of what we have going on as we come to Mark chapter 11, verse number 12. This is Jesus. Jesus is valuing, or he is assessing the Christianity, the Judaism of his day. He is looking around at all the people in all the different spots, and he is valuing, assessing religion of his day. This is an interesting time of the year. Wintertime, going into wintertime is an interesting time of the year because all the things that at one time were alive and living and blooming, like the flowers and the trees and the leaves, they all die. How many live here in Chicago? You live in the city. In Chicago, when the trees all die, the city comes onto your block and they put a big old red X on all the trees that are dead, right? I came home one afternoon this summer, and there was a tree with a big old red X on it that had not yet been cut down. And this particular dead tree got hit by a big old gust of wind and fell over onto my neighbor's house. I have a picture, I forgot to put it on the slide, but it just literally fell over. This is the season of time that all the things that at one time were living and loving and blooming and blossoming and budding, they all die. And it's so funny because Britannica and I have this running joke in our home where if, for Mother's Day for an example, I never buy Britannica flowers, ever. And not because I'm a jerk, not because I'm a bad husband, but because she has an amazing, her and I share a gift. We don't share a lot of common interests, but this is the one thing her and we share this together. If I gave my wife a bouquet of beautiful roses and flowers, it's from the heart, and Paige, you're so amazing mom, and love you, and yay, all that stuff, and I gave to her, she would have those flowers dead within half an hour of giving it. She has a gift. I have a gift of like killing things, like, so don't ever buy us flowers or things that are alive, except we don't kill children. We're pretty good at not killing children. We keep them alive. But if you give us a plant, we're going to just kill that thing. It's just one of those things. But the beautiful thing is this. I'm okay with killing plants because Jesus and I have that in common. In this story we're about to read, Jesus is going to kill this tree. Are you ready for the word?
Yeah.
You don't believe me? Let's read it here. Verse 12. It says, on the following day, when they came from Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Everybody say hungry.
Hungry.
And he went, and he's seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf. He went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it wasn't the season for figs. And he said to it, may no one, now Jesus is talking to the tree, may no one ever eat from you again. And his disciples heard it. I bet they did. Verse 15, and they came to Jerusalem. And he entered the temple and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them, saying to them, is it not written that my house shall be called a house of prayer for all? Everybody say all. All. Come on, say all. All. My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. But you have made it a den of robbers. And the chief priests and the scribes heard it and were seeking a way to destroy Jesus, for they feared him, because all the crowd was astonished at his teaching. And when evening came, they went out of the city. What we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is a picture. This is a metaphor for, so Jesus is on a journey. He's traveling to Jerusalem with his disciples. He gets a little bit hungry. He's got the rumbly tumbly, and he sees a fig tree in the distance. And this fig tree that has no figs, that has no fruit for Jesus to eat from, this then is the picture, is the metaphor of what he sees when he walks into the temple. He sees an amazing tree over in the distance. And what Jesus is doing, he's assessing the religion of his day. He's assessing the Judaism of his day. And he is correlating, he is relating the tree that has no nourishment, no fruit, no vegetation, no hydration, nothing on this tree. This then is the picture that Jesus sees when he walks into the temple. And Jesus gives us some unique insights when lifeless religion. And what he does, he assesses the religion of his day, and he says, you know what? This religion is totally and completely lifeless. It has nothing to offer whatsoever. And he kind of gives us a little bit of insight for you and I. Because not only is Jesus assessing the religion of his day, but he is assessing religion for all cultures, for all times. And he is saying lifeless religion, when it takes root in an organization, when it takes root in your heart, when lifeless religion takes over in your world, essentially, you're dead. That's what Jesus is getting at here. And he gives us a couple of unique insights regarding lifeless religion. And I want to give them to you here. This is Jesus' valuation, Jesus' assessment of lifeless religion. The first thing he says is this. Look at it. Verse 12. Lifeless religion only looks good from a distance. Look at it, verse 12. It says this. On the following day, he was coming from Bethany, and Jesus was hungry. Everybody say, Verse 13, and seeing in distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaf. Let's just picture this for an example. So Jesus is with his crew, he's with his posse, he's with his disciples, and they're traveling from Bethany to Jerusalem. They see over in the distance, Jesus is like, guys, I need some food in my belly, and there is a fig tree. I know it's a fig tree because a fig tree looked exactly, that's a fig tree. Guys, let's go to that fig tree. Let's get us some figs on today in my belly, get some carbohydrates, so I got some energy to get to Jerusalem. He goes over to the fig tree. He's looking through the branches. He's looking through the leaves, and he finds nothing. He finds nothing in this fig tree that should have fruit on it. He's got nothing there. And then he goes on. He look at it. He says, and for it was not season for figs. In verse 14, and he said to it, and Jesus, now you know Jesus is hangry when he begins talking to the tree. Verse 14, and he said to the tree, may no one ever eat fruit from you again. And the disciples, look at what it says, and his disciples heard it. So Jesus is hungry. He's going through the tree. There's no figs in the tree, looking through the branches, probably climbing up in the tree like Zacchaeus, looking for some kind of fruit, some kind of something to bring him some nourishment. There's no food in the tree. And Jesus looks at the tree and says, tree, die. That's essentially what he's getting at. This tree, cursed are you. No one will ever eat fruit from you again. And the disciples are like, can you just imagine the scene here? Like Jesus is talking to the tree. Die, tree, you're cursed. No one will ever eat. And the disciples are like, This is going to be a good one, guys. You know, this is going to be a really, really fun story example at some point here. The disciples heard it. I bet they did. I bet they did hear it. And this is essentially what Jesus is. I've got a picture of a fig tree I want to show you here. This is essentially what a fig tree would look like. It would kind of grow maybe 20 feet tall, 20 feet wide, good base there. And again, everybody would recognize this particular fruit tree. Now here's the thing. The Bible says that it was not the season for figs, but every traveler knew one thing. If you were traveling through the land of Jerusalem in this particular area, you would know one thing about this tree. Even though it's not the season for figs to be budding and blossoming off this tree, there would be on this tree, go to the next picture here, there would be on this tree let's go to the next picture. There would be on this tree like a little nub, like a little pre-fruit, which is right here. This is kind of like that it's kind of like a pre-fig. It's not quite a fig yet, but it's like a pre-fig. It's like a pre-fruit. So Jesus knew this, that tree, although that tree is not the season for the fig, it's not the season to have figs on this tree, he would know that this tree should have at least like a little nub. It should have a little piece of pre-fruit that he could pick off. Every traveler knew this. So you could go to a fig tree, pick off that little nub, and find nourishment. You'd find carbohydrates in this particular little nub. You'd find hydration from the fruit. You'd find like a succulent piece of little nub that you could actually pick off the tree and eat this little nub. And Jesus doesn't find even the little nub on the tree. There's no figs because it's not the season. And there's no nub, there's no pre-fruit. Why? And Jesus' assessment of the tree is that this tree is dead. This tree is dead. Although it looks, go back to that last picture, Matt, if you could. This tree looks good from a distance. So Jesus and his crew, they see the tree in the distance and they're like, that's a fig tree. That tree looks awesome. That tree's got succulent figs that I can eat from. I can nourish myself on that fig tree. Wow, it looks really, really good from a distance. But as you get up close, as you get personal with this tree and you begin digging into the tree, there's no fruit on this tree, but there's also no pre-fruit. There's nothing of value. And what Jesus is saying is that this tree is dead. And it hasn't yet manifested itself on the outside. What's Jesus getting at? The question for you and for me today is this. Are you perhaps, am I perhaps, looking pretty awesome on the outside? Like I walk into church, you walk into church, hey, how's it going? And we put on our Christian smiles. Things are good. It's a little busy. It's holiday time, stressful at work, but you know, things are good. Things are awesome, and you know, I'm going to family. Things are really, really good. And Jesus' concern rather would be, it's funny because if Jesus were to walk in this room, I think Jesus would do something he probably did here. He'd probably walk around. He'd probably assess the room. He'd probably have conversation with you. What's going on, Colin? How you doing, man? He'd be like, oh, good, Jesus. And Nate, what's going on, dude? Doing well? He'd probably assess the room. He'd probably figure it out. Carolyn, how are you? But then he'd get to a place and he'd say, no. How are you? And you begin to assess the spiritual fervor of your life. And he's not curious about how your life is going. He's asking you, how is your heart? How's your soul? And Jesus' concern for this tree and for the religion of his day is the same for you and I today. How is the internal nature of your heart? How is your soul doing? On the outside, do you look really good? Do you look plush? Do you look like you got it all together? Do you look like a good Christian? Do you look like everybody? You can fool a lot of people. You can fake a lot of people with the facade. Do you look really, really good from a distance? Do you look awesome? Like, I'm cool. As long as you ask me how I am, but kind of stay at arm's length. I don't want anybody to get up close. Because if you get up close, you know what? That's when you see the cracks in my foundation. You see what's really going on inside of me. Are you a kind of person? Jesus is asking you today, are you the kind of person that on the outside you look good? Looks all right. Looks like you got life together. But on the inside, lifeless religion is beginning to take over. And you're slowly dying on the inside. That's what Jesus sees in this tree. This tree looks cool. Looks like it could really nourish him. But on the inside, it's dead. And it just yet hasn't quite manifested itself on the outside. Revelation chapter 3, let's go to the next slide. Revelation chapter 3 says this. So Jesus is now assessing a church, and he says this, and to the angel of the church in Sardis write, to the words of him who has the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars, I know your works. This is Jesus talking. He says, I know you. I know you intimately. I know you personally. I know what you go through. I know what you're struggling with. I see you. I know your works. You have, look at what he says, you have a reputation of being alive. I know you personally. I know the facade you're playing. I know the face you put on. I know on the outside, everybody thinks you're a good Christian. I know everybody on the outside thinks things look good. I know your works. You have a reputation of being alive, but you are dead. This is Jesus' concern for you and for me today. On the outside, we look pretty good. But on the inside, are we dead inside? That's Jesus' concern for us today. But he doesn't stop there. You know, it's interesting, the more lifeless religion, the more we kind of allow ourselves to kind of plug into this idea that I'm good from a distance, I'm good from afar. The problem with that is this. Let's take that tree for an example. Go back to that picture of that tree. Take this tree for an example. Once all the leaves fall off, once all the branches are dead and dying, you're no longer amassing more leaves, no longer getting more branches, no longer bearing fruit, no longer bearing pre-fruit. You don't have anything going on. Once that begins to happen, the problem is this tree, once it totally dies, it can no longer respond to a healthy environment. Like I could take this tree and uproot it and put it in the best soil, gaining the best nutrients from that dirt, watering it the best I can, putting it in the best sunlight, but that dead tree will no longer respond to a healthy environment. It's really funny. I'm going to give you a little insight into the life of a pastor at times. I've been a pastor about 10, 11 years now, and this has not happened in our church here at the Grid. I love this church. But it has happened in my tenure as a pastor in previous places of ministry. You know, people may come to me and say, yeah, Pastor, I love the church. It's cool, got a lot of friends. I'm plugged into a group, a small group, and I serve on a worship team, and, yada, yada, yada. I love the church. But Pastor, you know what? I'm not really getting anything out of the sermons anymore. Or the songs we sing no longer give me the goosies that they once gave me. I don't think this is the church for me anymore. The sermons aren't good. I'm not getting anything out of them, and my response is always the same. Because every church I've ever been a part of, we've always had a priority to preach the Word of God. So whether you like the preacher or not, whether you like the songs or not, it's always truth going forth. And how many know, you shall know the truth will set you free. It's only the truth that has the power to change life. Not a preacher, not a song, not a worship leader. It's not the preacher. Whether you like the preacher, whether you don't like the preacher, my response is always the same. Is it the sermon or is it you? Is it the song or is it you? And invariably what ends up happening is I kind of dig a little deeper. I'm like, well, tell me what's going on. How's your walk with the Lord? How's your prayer life? How's your time in the Word of God? And I begin to realize, and they begin to share with me, you know what, I'm not where I once was in my relationship with God. Once that lifeless religion takes root in your heart, it's really, really hard for you to respond to a healthy. You can come into church, you can come into the presence of God, you can make all the excuses in the world, but if lifeless religion is taking over, it looks good from afar, but it's only a matter of time till those trees, till those branches fall off, till those leaves fall off. It looks really, really good from afar. But up close and personal, there's a crack in the foundation. You begin to die inside. And it's only a matter of time before that shows on the outside. That's number one, Jesus says. He goes on, though, lifeless religion, this is number two. Lifeless religion does not produce any fruit. Verse 13. And seeing it in the distance, a fig tree and leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves. Now, here's the thing. We're gonna kind of fly through this quick. This is important for us to note that this, what Jesus is saying, this is a continuation of a story from Luke. Let's go to that next slide. Luke chapter 13 says this. This is a continuation of the story. Jesus told this parable. A man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came seeking fruit on it and found none. And he said to the vine dresser, look, for 3 years now, I've come seeking fruit on this fig tree, and I can't find any. And he says, cut it down. Why should it use up the ground? And he answered him, sir, let it alone for just this year also. I'm going to dig around it. I'm going to put some manure down. And then verse 9, then if it should bear fruit next year, awesome, well and good. But if not, you can cut it down. Here's what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying it's too far gone for that tree. That tree's dead, it's dying, cut it down. It's no longer producing fruit, nor can it produce fruit anymore. That tree, it looks good from afar, but it's not producing any fruit in its life. Cut it down, get rid of it. Just cut it down, get it out of your life, get it out of your garden. We can put another tree that will bear fruit. What Jesus is getting at is this. He's asking you today, he's asking me today, what fruit are you producing in your life? And I really thought about it this week, and I was asking myself, what does fruit look like in the life of a believer, in your life and in my life? What should fruit look like? And really, one of the answers I came up with was it should look like change. I said, what do you mean? Well, change, like, am I changing to be more like Jesus today than I was yesterday? If I look the same today as I looked last week in my walk with Jesus, something's wrong. Something's off. Because we serve an infinite God who we will never find. We will never dig down deep enough to get to the bottom of who God is and the plans God has for our life. And so if I'm not continually changing to be more like Jesus, to be more like God in my life, then something's wrong inside. I'm not bearing fruit. I'm not even bearing the pre-fruit. And something is not right inside of me. I may look good on the outside. I may fool you for a little while. But inside I'm dead. And it's only a matter of time until those branches and those leaves fall off. I'm not producing any fruit. What does it look like in your life? Change. Are you changing to be more like Jesus? Am I changing to be more like Jesus in my marriage than I was last week? Am I striving to be a better father, to be more an example to my children today than I was yesterday? And if I am not changing, if I am not responding to the environments I'm in, if I'm not changing to be more like Jesus, I'm dying inside. And lifeless religion is beginning to take over in my life. Lifeless religion produces zero. Everybody say zero. And the last and the final thing is this. Lifeless religion, it becomes a haven for what God hates. We're going to wrap it up here. Verse 4. And they went on their way and found a colt. I'm sorry, this is the wrong verse. You're just going to have to listen because that's the wrong, I put the wrong verse up there. Verse 15 says, and they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple and began to drive out. Listen closely to this. He began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the table of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them, saying, is it not written that my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers? Have you ever thought about that before? Den of robbers? I was thinking about it this week, and essentially what Jesus is getting at is saying, you guys have the whole planet to transact and to trade and to buy and to sell. And you've chosen the temple of God. You've chosen the house of God to cheat people, to rob people, to extort. They're essentially extortioners is what they are, cheating people out of money. Here's a little background here real quick as we wrap it up. Caiaphas, who was the high priest in this particular story we're reading, only about 25 years prior to what we're reading right now, did he introduce this idea of like allowing buying and selling in the temple. And he was only concerned with actually enriching. He only wanted to enrich himself and enrich the high priest. That's all he was concerned about. So that if you were into the temple, the story we're reading here, this is a time of the year, it's called the Passover, where people come into the temple and present themselves to the Lord. All right, so you walk into the temple, and you have, let's say you have a dove, or you have a goat or a lamb, and this is your offering to the Lord. You go into the temple and you say, God, here is my offering to you. You go to one of the money changers and you say, here's my offering. They would look at your dove and they would say, you know what, your dove, it looks a little weird. It's got a little blemish on it. So here's what you can do. You can take that dove and you can go sell that dove. Now, because it's blemished, you're not going to get as much for it as you could, but you're still going to go sell it for a reduced rate. And then, because we're so awesome, we have doves here, and you can come buy our doves for an exorbitant amount of money, right? So you go sell your stuff for less. You come buy one of them. They're cheating people out of money, is what they're doing. And essentially what Jesus is getting at is that this particular religion, as he assesses it, he is saying this, verse 15, he overturned the table of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. Essentially, what is significant here is this. That same story, if you were the poorest of the poor, you didn't have to like come up with money for an offering. You could go to any street corner. I mean, think about it here in Chicago. You could go to any street here in Chicago and find a pigeon. You could find a pigeon. If you were the poorest of the poor amongst those in Jerusalem, all you had to do was go find you a pigeon. We were going downtown last night, and we came down here to the Brown Line in our neighborhood, the Western Brown Line. And we walk in, and my kids, if you've been to that Brown Line, you know that there's a little Dunkin' Donuts inside. And so we walk in, and all of a sudden these pigeons start flying around, and my kids are like, Dad, what's going on? Why are there birds all over the place? And there's pigeons everywhere here in Chicago. If you were the poorest of the poor in that time, all you had to do is go find you a pigeon and bring it into the temple, and that could be your offering to the Lord. And Jesus is saying he overturned the table of the money changers and the seats of those who even sold pigeons, because they were only concerned with enriching themselves. They were only all about them, all about me, all about me. And this is what religion does in your life. It makes it all about you. It makes it all about your preference, what you want, what you're all about, your schedule, your convenience, and anything outside of that, don't mess with me, don't bother me. And Jesus is saying the point is that your religion, your Judaism, your Christianity is all about you. Verse 17. He didn't stop there, he says, and he was teaching them, saying, is it not written that my house shall be called a house of prayer for all? Everybody say all. All. Come on, say it with some gusto. Say all. All. My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations. In their day, they thought when Messiah would come, that he would cleanse the temple. But what they thought that meant was that the Messiah would come, and they didn't think Jesus was Messiah. They thought when Messiah would come and cleanse the temple, that he would get rid of all of the non-believers. All of the people we read about in the story that just make Christianity and just make church a little inconvenient. That's their thought. They thought, you know what, if we can just get rid of all the Gentiles, if we can get rid of all the people that are just not like us, if we can get rid of them all, then we can really have church in this place. And they're missing the heart of God. They've totally missed the heart of God when it comes to relationship with Jesus Christ. Jesus did not come. Maybe you're here today and you're saying, you know what, that's kind of where I fall. I thought Jesus was just for a select few. And I'm here today to tell you he's not. He's for everybody, for all people, all backgrounds, all walks of life, all religion, all ethnicity. He is for all. My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers. And all of a sudden, in making it all about me, what happens is this. There's a diminishing desire to reach out beyond our scope of influence. There's a diminishing desire to share the love of Jesus with anybody in our lives. To share the good news of the gospel with anybody. Because it's inconvenient for me. Because my reputation. Well, because I can't at work. Well, because my neighbors think something differently. Well, because, and it becomes all about me and my preference, my convenience. We'll wrap it up here. This is Jesus' assessment of lifeless religion. If it takes root in your life, if it takes root in your heart, essentially lifeless religion is dead. It offers no hope. It offers no future, period. What Jesus is concerned with is this. And this is the good news today. Maybe you're here and you'd say, you know, maybe that kind of does describe me. Here's the good news. We serve a God who takes that which is dead, that which is seemingly going nowhere, and he can bring life about it. We've forgotten, for God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. The Word of God, Jesus is for all. He is for everybody, for all walks of life. And if you're here today thinking that Jesus is only for a select few, he's not. He's for you. He's for you no matter what you did last last night, no matter who you were with last week, no matter where you're going, He's for you. He's for all people, all walks of life. And the minute religion takes root in your heart is the minute you begin to dive. And that's not what Jesus is concerned with. He is concerned about having a personal, intimate walk, relationship with you. And if you're here today and you're far from God, He stands ready with arms open wide to say, come on in, my child. I love you. You're welcome in this family. If you're here today in lifeless religion, you kind of look good from afar. If that's beginning to take place in your life, to take root in your heart, there's good news for you as well, because God is a God who can take that and uproot those roots in your heart and bring that which is dead to life again. Amen? Amen. Let's pray together today. Would you bow your heads? Father, I thank you for your word. It's alive and living and active. And I pray that as truth has gone forth today, as your word has gone forth, God, that it would pierce our heart, God, and change us from the inside out. God, we need you. We recognize that without you, we have nothing and we are nothing. But God, when you come into our heart, you change everything. You know, maybe you're here today and you say, Pastor, here's the reality. At one time in my life, I lived for the Lord. I had a relationship with Jesus. And now life's just kind of gotten in the way, and I don't really have that relationship that I want.